You hear the phrase going berserk, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
probably picture someone just losing it. Totally uncontrolled, furious violence.
Yeah, that's the modern image. Definitely. Pure rage.
But have you ever wondered where that really comes from? That intense idea.
Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're going deep on the legendary Scandinavian warriors, the ones known as berserkers.
And we're aiming to go beyond just that, the pop culture stereotype.
Exactly. We'll look at the history, the culture, maybe even the psychology behind these pretty enigmatic figures.
So our mission for this deep dive is basically to piece together their story. Where do they come from? What do they do? And why do they still kind of fascinate us today?
Mm-hmm. And we've got some amazing sources to help us do that. We're talking ancient sagas, historical accounts, some really cool archaeological finds,
Yeah.
and even modern theories trying to explain it all. So hopefully we can give you a pretty comprehensive picture of what made a berserker, well, a berserker.
Okay, let's get started. To really get a handle on berserkers, I guess we need to start with the name itself. Berserk. Where does that actually come from?
Right, the etymology. So the Old Norse word is berserker. That's singular. Plural is berserker.
Berserker. Gotcha.
And it's a compound word. Now, the second part, serker, everyone agrees that means shirt or coat.
Okay, sure.
The first part, burr, that was debated for a while, but the consensus now is pretty strong. It almost certainly means bear.
Bear. So,
Go bear.
exactly. Bear shirt, which strongly suggests these warriors actually wore coats made from bearskins.
Wow, okay. That immediately paints a picture, doesn't it? Tying them straight to the wilderness, to the animal itself. But I feel like I've heard another explanation.
You probably have. There was another theory, quite influential for a time, put forward by Snorri Sturluson. He was a major Icelandic historian in the 13th century.
Snorri Sturluson, right?
He suggested Burr meant bear, as in uncovered, so bear shirt, meaning they fought without armor.
Ah, okay. That sounds plausible, too. It does, but that interpretation, well, it's largely been set aside now.
Why is that?
Mostly due to a lack of solid evidence supporting it. And there are other accounts that really seem to contradict it and point much more strongly towards the bear shirt meaning.
Okay, so bear shirts it is. That idea of wearing an animal skin, taking on its attributes, it feels primal. How far back does this kind of thing go, this connection between warriors and animals?
Oh, it's ancient, really ancient. Some scholars even propose that the whole northern warrior tradition, including the berserkers, might have its roots in, like, prehistoric hunting magic.
Hunting magic. How so?
The idea is that hunters would perform rituals to sort of take on the spirit or characteristics of the animal they were hunting, strength, ferocity, that kind of thing. And this could have evolved over time into warrior cults.
Interesting. And were there specific animals associated with these cults?
Yes, three main ones seem to emerge pretty clearly in the evidence. The bear, obviously, the wolf, and also the wild boar.
Bear, wolf, boar. Okay. And do we have actual, visual proof of this from way back? You mentioned archaeology.
We do, and some of it is surprisingly early. Think Roman Empire early.
Really? Romans and berserkers.
Well, not exactly berserkers as we know them from the Viking Age, but something very suggestive. On Trajan's column in Rome, that massive thing finished in 113 AD.
Yeah, I know the one. Amazing carvings.
Exactly. It shows scenes from the Roman conquest of Dacia, modern Romania, basically. And among the soldiers depicted are some Germanic auxiliaries fighting for the Romans.
Okay.
And some of these Germanic warriors are shown barefoot, bare-chested, and crucially, wearing hoods made from bear heads and wolf heads.
No way. Bear and wolf hoods.
Yeah.
Back in 113 AD.
Yep. And it's fascinating because some scholars point to this as possibly the only visual record we have of Germanic bear and wolf warriors fighting alongside each other until maybe the 9th century, way later.
Wow. So this wasn't just a Viking Age thing. It had roots stretching back centuries before that. What about later, during the migration period, say, between the Romans and the Vikings?
Absolutely. The evidence continues right through that period across Northern Europe. It shows these traditions were widespread and persistent.
Like what? What have we found?
Well, for example, in Denmark, you've got the golden horns of Galahus. These date to the 5th century AD. And they clearly depict figures with animal heads, 2 of them.
Animal heads again, okay.
Then jump over to Sweden. You have the Torslanda plates. These were found in 1870. They're these amazing little bronze dies for making helmet decorations.
Right.
And one of those plates seems to show a warrior involved in what looks very much like a berserker ritual, possibly alongside a figure representing Odin.
A ritual scene. That's incredible.
It is. And then down in Germany, there's the Gutenstein scabbard, found in a grave from the 7th century. It's got a figure on it, a warrior with a wolf's head, a clear Ulfagan, a wolf warrior.
An Ulfaven, wolf warrior.
Yeah. And you can even look at things like the Gundestrup cauldron, found in Denmark but maybe made elsewhere, dating possibly 200 BC to 300 AB. It has that famous antlered figure, maybe Cernunnos or a related deity linking humans and animals.
So all these finds from different places and times, what does it tell us?
It tells you that this idea of warriors channeling animal power, wearing animal skins or symbols, it wasn't isolated. It was a deep, long-running tradition across many Germanic cultures, long before the Viking Age proper. It shows just how far back this concept of the beast-like fighter really goes.
Okay, so we've got these ancient roots, these animal cults. Let's focus now on those main archetypes you mentioned, starting with the big one, the bear warriors, the Berserker themselves.
Right. The Berserkers, it's pretty widely accepted they drew their power, their identity from the bear, and the bear cult itself was huge. You find traces of it all across the Northern Hemisphere, not just Scandinavia.
And did this translate into specific practices beyond wearing the skin?
It seems so. We see hints of religious observances. For instance, in one saga, the Svarfdela saga, there's a story where a berserker is challenged to a duel, a Holmganga,
Okay.
but he insists on postponing it until 3 days after Yule, the midwinter festival, suggesting a connection to sacred times or rituals. And even in death, the connection remained. Sources suggest that dead berserkers were sometimes laid out for their funeral rites dressed in bearskins.
Wow. Fully embracing the bear identity to the very end.
Exactly. And, you can even see a faint echo today, some argue, in the tall bearskin hats worn by the royal lifeguards of the Danish monarchy.
No kidding, those big fuzzy hats. A link back to berserkers.
It's a symbolic link, perhaps, but a fascinating continuity, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, but let's talk about the main event. The Berserker Gang, the frenzy itself. What did that actually look like, according to the sources?
The Berserker Gang. Yeah, that's the terrifying part. Descriptions in battle paint a picture of utter frenzy. They'd howl like wild animals, foam at the mouth.
Foaming at the mouth. Yikes.
And apparently they'd gnaw on the iron rims of their shields. Just bite down on them in their fury.
Gnawing shields. Why?
Who knows for sure? Maybe intimidation, maybe just part of the uncontrollable rage. But the crucial element, the belief described in the sagas, was that during these fits, they were immune.
Immune? To what?
To steel and fire. Swords wouldn't cut them, flames wouldn't burn them, or so the belief went.
That sounds unbelievable, literally.
Well, it certainly made them devastating opponents if people believed it. Imagine facing someone you think can't be hurt by your sword. But the sagas also mention a downside.
Which was?
After the frenzy passed, they became incredibly weak, almost listless and tame, like they'd completely burned themselves out.
A total crash after the high. Now, you mentioned Snorri Sturluson earlier. Did he talk about this transformation aspect? It sounds like more than just battle anger.
He did, and this is where it gets even deeper, moving towards something almost mystical. The term to go berserk in Old Norse could be hamask.
Hamask.
Which literally meant something like to change form, or perhaps to enter a state of wild fury. It implies a transformation.
Changing form, like shape-shifting.
Well, that's the next level. Some scholars distinguish hamask from being hamaster. Yeah, which translates roughly as shape-strong. This term implies someone who could literally change their shape, specifically into the form of their animal totem, like a bear.
Okay, now we're really blurring lines between warrior and legend. Is there an example of this Hamremmer idea in the sagas?
Oh yeah, a classic one is the story of Budvar Bjarki from the saga of Hrolfkraki.
But Budvar Bjarki, what did he do?
In the final battle, Budvar Bjarki isn't seen fighting with the other champions. Instead, a huge, terrifying bear appears among the enemy ranks, fighting alongside King Hrolf's men.
A literal bear.
According to the saga, yes. And it says this bear slew more men with his forepaws than any 5 of the king's champions.
Wow.
Later, when his men find Bjarki seemingly asleep back in the hall, they wake him, and the bear vanishes from the battlefield. The implication is clear. Bjarki was the bear. He was Hamramper.
That's incredible. It really takes it beyond just battle rage into something fundamentally transformative, whether literally or metaphorically.
Absolutely. It shows how intertwined the historical warrior, the psychological state, and the legendary belief really were.
Okay, let's move from the bears to the wolves. The Ulfinar. How do they compare?
The wolf warriors, Ulfhinar, literally wolf skinners or wolf coats. They also pop up in various traditions. You find wolf warrior motifs in Indo-European myths, Turkic, Mongol, even some Native American legends.
So a widespread archetype, too.
Seems so, and specifically for the Germanic world, we find hints of them even on shields and standards captured by the Romans, which is pretty interesting.
And in the Norse sagas, how are they portrayed?
They consistently appear as elite warriors, often directly linked to kings. Sagas like Vatnsdæla Saga and the poem Hermethkwesi specifically mention them as part of King Harold Fairhair's retinue, his special shock troops, essentially.
Elite troops, did they dress differently?
Yes, descriptions suggest they wore wolf pelts, often over their chainmail, unlike the berserkers who might have forgone armor.
Wolf pelts over mail.
Okay. And they were often described as Odin's special warriors. Snorri Sturluson, again, writing about Odin's men, said they went forth mad as hounds or wolves, bit their shields. Neither fire nor iron had effect upon them. Sounds familiar, right?
Very familiar. The shield biting, the immunity. It mirrors the berserkers.
It does. And remember that Torslanda helmet plate we mentioned? The one with the possible berserker ritual?
Yeah.
It depicts a warrior with a wolf's head standing next to a figure with only one eye.
One eye, Odin.
That's the strong assumption. So it visually links the wolf warrior directly to Odin, reinforcing that idea of them being his chosen fighters.
They're warriors, wolf warriors, and you mentioned a third, boars.
Yes, the proposed boar warriors, sometimes linked to the Old Norse word jengfur.
Jengfur, what's the connection?
Well, jengfur originally just meant wild boar, but over time the word also came to mean prince, monarch, or chieftain, and by extension, sometimes warrior.
Huh. Why would a word for boar come to mean prince?
The likely reason is the significance of the boar in Germanic culture and mythology, particularly linked to boar-crested helmets. Wearing such a helmet was a sign of status and protection.
Oh, helmets.
Swine, both wild boars and domestic pigs, were hugely important in Germanic paganism. They were sacred animals, strongly associated with the Vanir gods, especially Freyr and his sister Freya. Freyr had a golden boar named Gullinbursti. Freya had one called Hildisvini.
So a powerful religious symbol.
Definitely. And the theory goes that, similar to bear and wolf warriors, some fighters may have ritually identified with the boar, seeking its strength and protective qualities in battle. This might have been symbolized by wearing those boar-crested helmets we see depicted.
Where do we see those depictions?
Again, places like the Torslanda plates show figures with boar crests on their helmets, and the Gundestrup cauldron also features warriors with boar-crested helmets, so the visual evidence is there.
It seems clear these weren't just, random thugs. There was a deep cultural and maybe religious context. But how did perceptions change over time? Did berserkers always have this fearsome, respected image?
Not entirely.
Mm-hmm.
There's a noticeable shift in how they're portrayed in the sagas over the centuries.
How so?
In the earlier sagas, composed closer to the Viking Age, they're often depicted quite positively or at least neutrally. They're elite bodyguards for kings, champions, valued warriors. Still dangerous, but part of the heroic landscape.
Okay, the early view.
But in the later sagas, written perhaps in the 13th or 14th centuries, well after Christianization, the image darkens considerably.
Darkens how?
They're often portrayed as villains. They become disruptive figures, braggarts, bullies, men who show up uninvited, challenge honorable men to duels for their land or wives, loot, plunder, kill indiscriminately, basically uncontrollable thugs.
So a real downgrade in status.
A major one. They even get categorized into different types in some analyses of the sagas. You have the King's Berserker, the loyal bodyguard type more common in early sagas, the hall-challenging Berserker, the troublemaker, the Homgangumar, a duelist often using Berserker tactics, and the Viking Berserker, associated with raiding.
And I guess with Christianity taking hold, their pagan associations didn't help.
Definitely not. By Christian writers, they were often explicitly depicted as heathen devils, embodiments of pagan savagery that needed to be suppressed.
Can we pinpoint when we first see the term berserker or related terms in writing?
The earliest clear written reference we have is probably in that poem Haraldskvæði, written by Thorbjorn Hornklofi around the late 9th century.
Haraldskvæði, the one about Harold Fairhair.
That's the one. It specifically describes his warriors, calling them Ulfenar, the wolf-skinned ones.
Ah, the wolf warriors again.
Yep. And the description is vivid. Wolfskin, they're called. In battle, they bear bloody shields. Red with blood are their spears when they come to fight. It really captures that ferocity.
It does. Any other notable descriptions?
Well, the poem also uses a kenning, a sort of poetic metaphor, calling ravens tasters of blood, implying they follow these warriors to feast on the dead. Grim stuff.
Very grim. And then Snorri Sturluson's description is later, right? 12th, 13th century.
Yes, much later, but perhaps the most famous. In his Ynglinga saga, part of the Heimskringla, he describes Odin's men, and it's debated if he means berserkers specifically or just divinely inspired warriors.
What does he say?
He says they rushed forwards without armor, were as mad as dogs or wolves, bit their shields, strong as bears or wild bulls, and killed people at a blow, but neither fire nor iron told upon them. This, he concludes, was called Berserker Gang.
There it is again. Berserker gang. And that immunity claim. Neither fire nor iron told upon them. How seriously should we take that? Was it just hype?
It's a recurring theme, for sure. The sagas constantly mention the supposed immunity to edged weapons and fire. But, and this is a crucial point often highlighted,
Yes.
they were not described as immune to blunt force. Clubs, hammers, large stones, those seem to work just fine. Ah, okay. So there was a loophole.
Seems so. There's a great example in one saga, the story of Halfdan and a berserker named Hardbin.
Hard bean. Sounds tough.
He was. During their fight, Hardbin goes into a full berserker gang. He bites his shield. He apparently swallows glowing coals from the fire.
Swallow cold.
Yeah, and then rushes through the fire at Halfdan, unharmed by the flames. It's peak berserker display.
So how does Halfdan beat him if he's immune?
Halfdan doesn't try to stab or cut him. He uses a huge club, described as a hammer of wondrous size, and basically beats Harbin down with blunt trauma.
The hammer finds a way.
Exactly. It vividly shows both the belief in their resistance and their ultimate vulnerability. It wasn't magic armor against everything.
Were there other sort of supernatural powers attributed to them besides the immunity?
Yes, sometimes you hear motifs of them being able to blunt enemy swords just by looking at them, using spells, or maybe an evil eye.
Blunting blades with a look. Yeah, which sounds pretty magical. Some scholars compare these accounts to maybe stage magic or faker tricks we hear about in other cultures, perhaps performative elements designed to intimidate and demoralize opponents as much as anything else.
Psychological warfare, basically.
Could be a big part of it.
So these fearsome warriors, whether magically protected or just terrifyingly intimidating, they didn't last forever. What happened?
No, as an organized phenomenon, they faded out. By the 12th century, organized berserker war bands seem to have largely disappeared.
Why? Was it just the change in attitude?
That was likely part of it, the shift in cultural values, especially with Christianity, but there is also active suppression.
They were outlawed.
Yes. Jarl Eirikur Hakanarsson, who ruled Norway in the early 11th century, explicitly outlawed berserkers around 1015.
Outlaw them completely.
And in Iceland, the ancient law code, the Gragas, Grey Goose laws, also included provisions against berserkers and their rampages. So legal pressure combined with changing social norms probably led to their decline.
Interesting. And just as a side note, didn't some famous artifacts actually depict that shield-biting thing Snorri mentioned?
Good point. Yes, the Lewis chessmen. Those incredible carved chess pieces found in Scotland, thought to be Norse-made, likely in the 12th century.
Right, the chess pieces.
Several of the warder pieces, which correspond to rooks or castles, are depicted as warriors literally biting the top edge of their shields.
Wow. So it wasn't just a poetic flourish in the sagas, it was a known image, something recognizable enough to carve onto a chess piece.
Exactly. It visually reinforces those saga descriptions in a really tangible way.
Okay, this brings us to the really big question and what everyone wants to know. What was the Berserker Gang? What caused this state? Modern science must have theories, right?
Oh, absolutely. Scholars have been trying to decode the frenzy for a long time, trying to bridge those historical accounts with modern understanding.
Where do they start?
Well, some look for ritual parallels. Hilda Ellis Davidson, a prominent scholar of Norse mythology, pointed out similarities between berserker descriptions and accounts of something called the Gothic dance.
The Gothic dance, what's that?
It was apparently performed by members of the Varangian Guard, the Norse elite guard serving the Byzantine emperors in Constantinople. Accounts describe them performing wild dances, wearing animal skins and masks, possibly in a trance state.
So, suggesting the Berserker Gang might have been partly a ritual performance.
Possibly, or at least shared roots in ecstatic ritual behavior involving animal identification. It highlights the performative and psychological aspects.
And what about the physical symptoms? They sound pretty extreme.
They do. The accounts consistently describe a sequence. First, shivering, chattering teeth, feeling cold. Then the face swells, changes color. Then comes the heat, the uncontrollable rage, the howling, the shield biting, the indiscriminate violence against friend and foe alike.
Indiscriminate. So a danger to their own side, too.
Sometimes, yes, the loss of control was key. And then afterwards, that profound exhaustion, the mental dullness lasting maybe hours or even days, like a massive adrenaline dump, followed by a complete system crash.
So what could medically or chemically trigger something like that? What are the main theories?
Well, one of the most persistent and maybe controversial theories involves substances, drugs or alcohol.
Ah, the drug theory. What kind of substances?
It's been debated a lot. Some proposed hallucinogenic mushrooms like Amanita muscaria, fly agaric. Others suggest massive amounts of alcohol, or maybe specific herbal concoctions, perhaps something called butotens, though what that actually contained is speculative.
Is there any actual evidence for drug use? Or is it just guesswork?
There is some intriguing archaeological evidence. In 1977, a Viking grave was excavated in Furkat, Denmark, and inside they found a leather pouch containing seeds.
Seeds? What kind?
Black henbane seeds, Hyoscyamus niger.
Henbane. Isn't that poisonous?
It is, but it's also a powerful psychoactive plant, and the symptoms it can induce in certain doses, well, they match the descriptions of the Berserker gang remarkably well.
Like what?
Delirium, hallucinations, agitation, muscle rigidity, flushed face, loss of inhibition, followed by stupor or exhaustion. It fits quite neatly.
Wow. So finding henbane in a Viking grave, that's pretty suggestive, isn't it?
It's definitely fuel for the theory. It raises that big question. Was the frenzy purely ritual or psychological, or was pharmacology involved? Maybe a combination, we can't know for sure. But the henbane find is a key piece of the puzzle.
Are there other explanations floating around besides drugs or ritual?
Yeah, people have suggested other things too, maybe some kind of self-induced hysteria, collective trance. Some have speculated about conditions like epilepsy or other forms of mental illness manifesting under extreme stress.
And what about psychological explanations? Thinking about trauma, battle stress.
That's a really compelling modern angle. Jonathan Shea, a clinical psychiatrist who worked extensively with Vietnam veterans, in his book Achilles in Vietnam, he makes a direct, explicit link between the state of berserker rage described in ancient texts and the experience of hyperarousal in modern post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
PTSD. How does that connect?
Shea argues that the berserk state is a specific response to extreme threat and trauma, where the soldier enters a kind of dissociative state of pure destructive fury, losing all sense of self-preservation or rational thought.
That sounds chillingly like the descriptions.
It does. And he notes that surviving such a state can leave deep psychological scars, what he calls emotional deadness, extreme vulnerability to explosive rage later on, and a state of permanent hyperarousal. These are all recognized symptoms of severe PTSD.
So viewing the Berserker gang through the lens of trauma psychology, that really reframes it, doesn't it? It makes it less monstrous, maybe more tragically human.
I think so. It offers a powerful psychological framework to understand not just the frenzy itself, but perhaps the aftermath for those who experienced it. And interestingly, some have even suggested that the uncontrollable animalistic transformations seen in berserkers might be one of the historical roots feeding into the legend of the werewolf.
The werewolf connection again. It all seems to weave together history, psychology, myth.
It really does.
And it's clear this image, this idea of the berserker, it hasn't faded away. It's definitely left a mark on our culture.
Oh, absolutely. It's endured incredibly well in popular culture, in fantasy, in games, in movies. The echoes are everywhere.
Can you give some quick examples? Where do we see berserkers today?
Sure. I mean, think of literature. J.R.R. Tolkien's character Bjorn in The Hobbit. He's a classic berserker type, literally a skin changer who transforms into a giant bear.
Right, Bjorn, good one.
Video games are full of them. The Witcher 3. Wild Hunt features characters called berserkers who transform into bears. Assassin's Creed Valhalla has a character named Bjorn the Berserker and quests involving berserker rituals.
Makes sense for a Viking game.
Exactly. Even in superhero comics, Marvel's Thor sometimes enters a state called the Warrior's Madness, which is very berserker-like. And in the TV show Agents of SHIELD, there was an Asgardian berserker staff that induced rage.
Huh. Okay.
Sci-fi too. The TV show Falling Skies had a faction of human fighters called the Berserkers, and then there's the recent film The Northman.
Oh, yeah, the Northmen. Very intense.
Very. And its main character is explicitly raised as part of a Berserker warband, and the film depicts a pretty wild pre-battle ritual, clearly inspired by the Berserker gang. The influence is undeniable.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've journeyed from these ancient warriors channeling animal fury
Right, through the historical accounts, the changing perceptions, the archaeological clues.
to trying to understand the sheer intensity of the Berserker gang itself, looking at ritual, maybe substances, psychology.
And finally, seeing how this potent image keeps hold of our imagination today.
It really is a fascinating phenomenon, this idea of a warrior pushing past normal human limits.
Yeah, through this intense combination of belief, maybe ritual practice, possibly pharmacology, as we discussed, and just sheer mental force or breakdown, depending how you see it.
Yeah.
Continues to resonate, doesn't it?
It does. And maybe their story tells us something about the human capacity for extreme states in general, whether it's triggered by the horrors of war or maybe even other intense situations.
That's a really interesting thought to leave people with. It makes you wonder, are there echoes of that Berserker gang, that total consuming focus and intensity, maybe even loss of self in experiences we might recognize today?
Like what?
Well, perhaps in the zone of an elite athlete, or the intense focus of deep creative work, or maybe even the body's response to extreme stress or survival situations. Are those modern flickers of the same potential state?
Hmm. That's definitely something to mull over. Are there modern berserkers in a sense, just without the bearskins?
Maybe. Something for you, the listener, to think about.